Okay, so importing furniture from China, it can seem kind of overwhelming, right? Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, it's a common feeling. I mean, there's a lot to consider, but once you break it down, it's not as intimidating as it seems.
Well, we're in luck because joining us today is someone who's actually mastered this whole importing thing. Sunbin Chi, CEO of ASKT. He's got a ton of experience bringing furniture from China.
And his story is really inspiring. He
Uh,
started small and now his company is thriving.
exactly. So let's tap into his knowledge, right? I mean, he really emphasizes the importance of attending trade fairs like the Canton Fair. Why is that so crucial?
Well, think of it this way. The Canton Fair, it's basically the Super Bowl of global trade.
Whoa, okay, I'm listening.
You've got suppliers from all over China showcasing their latest and greatest products. You're talking furniture, electronics, textiles, everything.
Oh, wow. So you can actually see the furniture firsthand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can touch it, you can feel the quality, you can even see the manufacturing processes sometimes.
That's amazing. So much better than browsing online,
Oh,
right?
for sure. I mean, there's just something about that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
You can actually talk to the suppliers, ask questions, build relationships.
Makes sense. You get a much better feel for who you're dealing with.
Exactly. So, yeah, if you're serious about importing, attending a trade fair like the Canton Fair, it's a must.
Okay, I'm adding that to my to-do list. But let's be real, not everyone can hop on a plane to China tomorrow. What about those of us looking for, more immediate options? How do we find those reliable suppliers?
Well, luckily, there's a ton of online platforms now that connect importers with verified suppliers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, these platforms, they have detailed company profiles, product catalogs, even customer reviews.
Okay, so that sounds like a good starting point. But then how do you know you're actually getting what you paid for? I mean, how can you be sure the quality is up to par when you're dealing with someone, across the world?
Right, and that's a huge concern. Even Sunbin, he admitted that he had those worries, especially when he was trying to meet those strict German quality
Oh,
standards.
for sure.
But there are steps you can take. The first thing, always request samples.
Oh, yeah.
It seems obvious, but it's crucial. You actually see the product, feel the materials, get a sense of the craftsmanship.
Good point. But what if the samples look great, but then you're still nervous about the bulk order?
In that case, you can hire a third-party inspection company.
Okay, now that sounds interesting.
They have experts, boots on the ground in China, who could actually visit the factory, inspect the production process, and verify that everything's meeting your specific requirements.
Wow, so you get like a professional second opinion.
Exactly. It gives you peace of mind, knowing that someone's looking out for your best interests.
Okay, so we've found the supplier, we've seen the samples, maybe even had an inspection. What's next? What's the next hurdle?
Ah, well then comes the paperwork. The licenses, the contracts, the compliance certificates.
Ugh, the paperwork?
It can seem daunting, right? But Sunbin, he actually has a really smart suggestion for this. He recommends partnering with a local agent in China,
Oh, okay, interesting.
someone who understands both German and Chinese regulations. They act as your guide, helping you with the documentation and making sure you meet all the legal requirements.
So it's like having a translator, but for bureaucracy.
Exactly. They can help you draft contracts, obtain licenses, even navigate customs clearance.
Wow, that takes a lot of pressure off.
It does. It can make a world of difference.
Okay, so let's recap. We've talked about finding those reliable suppliers, either through trade fairs or online platforms, ensuring the quality with samples and inspections, and then tackling the paperwork with a local agent. What's next in this whole importing journey?
Well, now we get into the actual process. Sunbin actually lays out an 8-step framework for importing success. He breaks down the entire journey into these manageable chunks.
Mhm.
Makes it seem a lot less overwhelming.
Okay, so not climbing Mount Everest, more like a nice hike. I like it.
Exactly. And the first step, it all starts with thorough research.
Right, like we talked about, making sure you really vet those potential suppliers.
Yeah, this is not just a one-time purchase. You're building a relationship with this supplier, someone who understands your needs and values.
Absolutely. You got to make sure you're on the same page.
Right. And once you've identified those promising candidates, it's time for step 2, communication.
Okay, so this is where you start reaching out, getting to know these suppliers a little better.
Think of it as like a first date for your business.
Oh, I like that.
You're asking those important questions, getting a feel for their communication style, making sure they're a good fit for your company culture.
Testing the waters before you dive in.
Exactly. And speaking of testing, step 3 is all about sampling.
Ah, yes. This is where we finally get to see those beautiful chairs, right?
Exactly. You request samples, make sure the quality meets your expectations. Be specific, outline the materials, the dimensions, the finishes, all those details,
Yeah, get everything clear up front.
right? Saves you a lot of headaches later.
Hmm.
And once you're happy with those samples, it's on to step 4, negotiation.
Okay, time to put on our bargaining hats.
It's like a friendly dance,
Yeah.
finding that sweet spot where everyone feels good about the agreement.
So we've found our supplier, we've fallen in love with the samples, we've negotiated a price we're happy with. What's next?
Step 5, making it official. Placing that order. Get that contract signed. Make sure all the details are crystal clear.
It's like signing the dotted line on a dream come true.
It is. It's exciting. But we're not done yet.
Of course not. There's always more, right?
There's a few more steps to navigate. Step 6, it's all about shipping. Choosing the method that best suits your needs and your budget.
Right. And we've got a few options there. Sea freight, air freight, that interesting rail transport option.
Exactly. Each method has its own pros and cons, which we'll definitely delve into more in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've tackled research, communications, sampling, negotiation, the order placement, and even gotten a glimpse of the shipping options. What are the final 2 steps in this whole importing adventure?
Well, step 7 is all about customs. That can be a little intimidating for some. All the regulations, the paperwork, the clearances.
Yeah, that's the part I'm still a little nervous about.
But it doesn't have to be scary. With the right preparation and maybe even a customs broker to help you out, it can be surprisingly smooth.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And finally, step 8. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, right?
Exactly. Step 8 is delivery. The grand finale. Those beautiful chairs finally arrive, ready to transform your space.
Now that's worth celebrating. But before we get too excited, I know there's one big question on everyone's mind, the cost, this whole importing thing. How much is it actually going to set us back?
Ah, yes, the financial side of importing. Well, that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive. We'll break down those costs, demystify those taxes, and make sure you have a clear understanding of the financial landscape of importing furniture from China.
All right, so don't go anywhere, listeners. We'll be right back to guide you through that financial maze and equip you with all the knowledge you need to make those smart importing decisions. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle the financial side of importing. I'm sure everyone's wondering, like, what's the bottom line here? What's this all going to cost?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And it can be kind of tricky, but like anything, once you understand the different components, it becomes a lot clearer.
All right, so let's break it down then. Where do we even begin?
Well, first you've got the actual product cost, right? The price you're paying per chair. Seems obvious, but even there are things to keep in mind.
Okay, so it's not just picking a chair and multiplying by, however many I need.
Not quite. See, Sunbin, he talks about how buying in bulk can actually save you a good chunk of change. He gives an example. Ordering 500 chairs, they might cost you, say, €30 each. But bump that up to 1,000 chairs, and suddenly the price drops to 25 each.
Oh, okay. So the more you buy, the less you pay per chair. Classic bulk discount.
Exactly. Economies of scale. But of course, got to be realistic. Not everyone's got the space or the money to buy 1,000 chairs at once.
Right. Got to find that sweet spot. So, product cost, check. What's next on the financial agenda?
Next up is shipping. Getting those chairs from China all the way to Germany. And that's where things can get interesting.
This is where those different shipping methods come into play, right? We talked about sea freight, air freight, and even rail transport.
Exactly. And each one's going to have a different impact on your budget.
Yeah.
Let's start with sea freight. Usually the cheapest option, especially for large shipments. Sunbin estimates it'll run you between €1,500 and €2,000 per container.
Okay, not bad. But I remember you mentioned something about the sea freight being a bit slower.
Right, yeah. The trade-off for those lower costs is time. You're looking at, 30 to 40 days for delivery. So if you need those chairs quickly, might not be the best choice.
So if speed's a priority, then air freight's the way to go.
Pretty much. Fastest way to get those chairs from point A to point B, delivery in like 5 to 10 days. But of course, that speed comes with a price tag. Think more along the lines of like €5 to €7 per kilogram.
Okay, yeah, sometimes you got to pay for convenience, right? But what about rail transport? Where does that fit in cost-wise?
Rail, it's a good middle ground, honestly. Faster than sea freight, usually cheaper than air freight, so it's become a popular option.
All right, so we've got product costs, we've got shipping. What else do we need to factor in?
Well, then we got to talk about the T word, taxes. Specifically, import duties and value-added tax, VAT.
Right, taxes. Can't forget about those. Let's start with import duties. What are we looking at there?
Basically, it's a fee the German government charges on goods coming into the country. Good news is, for dining chairs, the import duty rate is pretty low, usually between 0 and 5% of the product value.
Oh, okay, that's not too bad. But how do they even decide on that percentage?
It all comes down to the HS code. Every product in international trade has one. It's basically a unique code, like a fingerprint for your product.
So making sure you've got the right HS code is important.
Oh, absolutely. Get that wrong, and you could end up paying way more in duties than you should.
HS codes, got it. Okay, now what about VAT? I know Germany has VAT, but how does that work with imports?
Standard VAT rate in Germany is 19%, and here's the catch. It's calculated on the total value of the imported goods. Not just the chairs themselves, but the shipping costs and any import duties you've already paid.
Oh, wow. So it's like a percentage of the whole package deal.
Exactly. So let's say, hypothetically, you're importing 20,000 euros worth of chairs, and shipping runs you another 2,000 euro. Let's assume a 3% import duty rate just for this example.
All right, I'm following along.
So first, you calculate the import duty, 3% of 20,000 euro, which comes out to 600. Then you add that to the product cost and shipping costs, giving you a subtotal of 22,600. And finally, you calculate the 19% VAT on that subtotal, which comes out to, whoa, 4,294.
Yikes. That adds up quickly. Makes you realize how important it is to budget for those taxes.
For sure. Got to look at the big picture, not just the sticker price.
Okay, well, you've definitely shed some light on the tax situation. Are there any other sneaky costs lurking out there that we should be aware of?
Oh, there are always those little extras. You might need insurance to protect your shipment during transit, maybe some warehousing fees if you need to store the chairs before they reach their final destination, and potentially customs brokerage fees if you decide to go with a broker to help you through customs.
So it's all about being prepared, right? Having a little buffer in that budget for those unexpected costs.
Exactly. Importing, it's like a financial puzzle. But with a little planning, you could definitely put all the pieces together.
Well, I feel much more confident about tackling the financial side of things now. But before we move on, I want to circle back to shipping for a second. We talked about the different methods and the costs, but what about the actual logistics? Like, how do those chairs physically get from the factory in China all the way to, my doorstep in Germany?
Yes, the actual journey. That's where we're going to delve into the nitty-gritty of shipping logistics.
Okay, so we've talked about finding suppliers, negotiating prices, figuring out the costs, and now I'm really curious about the actual shipping process. How did those chairs physically get from China to Germany?
Yeah, it's a journey. A lot of moving parts involved. But think of it like a well-coordinated dance.
Okay, I like that. A logistical ballet. So our chairs are all packed up, ready to go. What happens first?
First things first, you got to book your shipment. And this is where those freight forwarders, remember we talked about them? They really come into play. They're like the stage managers of the shipping world.
Okay, so they're the ones who actually book the space on a ship or a plane.
Exactly. They work with the shipping lines, find the best routes, negotiate the rates, all that. They're the experts at navigating that whole international shipping maze.
Sounds like they make life a lot easier for the importer. But while the freight forwarder is doing that, what's happening on the supplier's end?
Well, on the supplier side, they're busy getting all the paperwork in order. The bill of lading, the commercial invoice, the packing list, the certificate of origin, all that fun stuff.
That sounds like a lot of paperwork. What's it all for?
Basically, those documents, they're like passports for your shipment. They tell customs officials everything they need to know about the goods, where they're coming from, what they are, where they're going.
Makes sense. Got to keep everything transparent.
Exactly. And trust me, having all the paperwork in order, it's crucial. Any mistakes or missing documents, that can lead to big delays, even fines.
Like showing up at the airport without your passport. Not going to get very far.
Exactly. So while the freight forwarder's handling the transportation, your suppliers making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Okay, so transportation's booked, paperwork's prepped. I'm assuming the chairs are, packaged properly to survive the trip.
Oh, absolutely. Proper packaging it's essential. You got to protect those chairs, make sure they're secure and safe from any damage during transit.
Right, got to keep them cozy for their big adventure. So they're all packed up. What happens next?
All right, so the shipment arrives at the port in Germany, and this is where the freight forwarder steps back in. They handle the customs clearance process using all that lovely paperwork we talked about.
So the freight forwarder's like a diplomat, making sure the chairs get through customs smoothly.
That's a great way to put it. They know all the rules, the regulations, the tariff codes, everything.
It's amazing all the work that goes into getting those chairs from point A to point B.
It really is. And once the shipment clears customs, the freight forwarder, they take care of the final leg of the journey, arranging local transportation to get those chairs to your warehouse or your store.
Wow, so the freight forwarder really does handle everything, start to finish.
Pretty much. They're like the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the instruments are playing together in harmony.
I gotta say, you've really demystified this whole importing process. It doesn't seem so intimidating anymore.
That's the power of knowledge, right? Sunbin's story, it shows us that importing, it can be a really rewarding experience.
And think of the satisfaction,
Yeah.
knowing that you've brought these beautiful pieces from across the world to enhance people's homes.
Exactly. It's about connecting cultures, sharing creativity, and creating something beautiful and lasting.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into importing furniture from China. Hopefully it's inspired you to, maybe start your own importing adventure. We've covered a lot of ground, from finding those perfect suppliers to negotiating prices, understanding those tricky taxes, and navigating the ins and outs of shipping.
It's been great sharing these insights with you, and we hope you feel empowered to take that first step towards your own importing success.
And remember, importing doesn't have to be scary. With the right knowledge, the right partners, and a little bit of adventurous spirit, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience. So go forth and import.